All right, today we're diving into a really powerful topic, a groundbreaking way of treating the deepest wounds of war. We're talking about an approach that goes way beyond just a Band-Aid fix for trauma. It's a story that's getting a ton of attention right now, and we're going to break down exactly why.
And that quote you just saw? It's from Navy SEAL veteran Marcus Capone, and man, it just gets right to the heart of this whole thing. It perfectly captures the idea behind this new wave of therapy for veterans, a story that's now being seen by millions thanks to a new Netflix film.
So this new film, In Waves and War, it follows the journeys of 3 Navy SEALs. One of them is Marcus Capone, a 13-year veteran, and his story, his struggle after leaving the service, is absolutely central to understanding why these alternative treatments are becoming so incredibly important. Okay, so to really get why a highly decorated warrior might turn to something so unconventional, we first have to talk about the profound crisis that's waiting for so many veterans when they come home.
And listen, this isn't some abstract problem we're talking about here. For so many veterans, it's a brutal daily battle with trauma, a battle that can devastate families and leads to tragically high suicide rates. You can see the raw reality of it in Marcus Capone's own words from before he found help.
I mean, get this. In the actual letter he wrote requesting medical retirement, Capone just laid it out there, admitting his mental condition was deteriorating. The usual therapies and medications from the VA, they just weren't working. In fact, things were only getting worse.
So, with all the traditional options failing one after another, Capone and his wife Amber are facing a really stark and honestly desperate choice. It became this last-ditch search for something, anything that could save not just his health, but his family.
And this just lays out the impossible choice he was facing, right? On one side, you have the VA-sanctioned treatments, totally legal, but for him, completely ineffective. And on the other side, this radical alternative, psychedelic therapy, which was illegal in the US and meant he'd have to travel abroad. So even though he was apprehensive, who wouldn't be, his wife convinced him and he went to a clinic down in Mexico. The therapies they used involved 2 really powerful, naturally occurring psychedelics, Ibogaine, which comes from a West African shrub, and DMT. Both of these are strictly prohibited here in the States, listed as Schedule I substances. And what happened in Mexico? Wow. It was this incredible breakthrough, something that years of conventional therapy hadn't even come close to giving him. The treatment was unbelievably effective. We're talking about these deeply personal, internal journeys that let him see his service traumas from a totally new perspective, to find some real closure. But the healing went even deeper than that. And this is where we get back to that whole not just a Band-Aid idea, you see? The treatment didn't just touch on his military trauma, it actually unearthed and helped him process things from way before he ever enlisted, getting to the real root cause of what was affecting his life every single day. You know, his fellow SEAL, Matty Roberts, went through it too. And his take on it just perfectly sums up the whole experience. It's intense, it is absolutely grueling, but in the end, it's this profoundly connecting and healing process. For Capone, this wasn't just about his own healing. It almost immediately turned into a public mission. He apparently told his wife, all of our friends that are suffering, we need to introduce this to them to get them better. So that's exactly what they did. In 2019, he and Amber founded the nonprofit VETS, that's Veterans Exploring Treatment Solutions. And its growth has been, well, explosive. In just a few years, they funded these treatments for over 1,200 veterans. But here's the thing about that massive growth. It uncovered a whole new crisis. The demand is just staggering. The organization is so flooded with applications that for every 10 veterans who apply for help, they can only say yes to 1.
So what happens when you have these incredibly powerful personal stories, plus this just overwhelming demand? Well, you start to see a massive shift, even at the national level. The door to some real reform is finally starting to crack open.
And this is huge. Seriously, for the first time since the 1960s, the Department of Veterans Affairs is funding its own research into psychedelic-assisted therapies. They're now studying substances like MDMA, which is known for fostering empathy, and psilocybin, from magic mushrooms, for things like PTSD, depression, and alcohol use disorder. So when you look at this whole story, from one veteran's desperate search for healing all the way to a national shift in policy, it really leaves you with one massive question, doesn't it? If these treatments are showing this much promise for healing the deepest invisible wounds of war, well, what could that mean for the future of mental health care for every single one of us?